Hey everyone, welcome to a very special This Just In. Here I am in Vancouver visiting some of the most amazing leather workers I've ever had the opportunity to meet, to see their work. And you more than likely have seen a lot of their work in TVs and TV shows, superhero shows, pretty much many programs shot in Vancouver they probably have their hand in. And I thought we'd get to know them, see some of the stuff that they've done, and we'll go from there. So just to give you an introduction to each of them, there is Keith and Daryl, and they are the owners of Ocean Drive Leather. And Keith, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your company?
Well, hey there. I'm the elder brother, and Daryl and I started this business together about 20 years ago, and we started in fashion, and the film industry, local film industry here has been getting busier and busier over the years, so they've been tapping into our skills more and more over the years until here we are right now with several shows under our belt. Several dozen. Yeah, they're keeping us really busy right now. So.
Well, it goes back to 1998. So we had a small retail storefront with sewing machines in the back, 2 sewing machines in the back, and a cutting table. And we started out doing custom leather jackets. And it was not long before the costume designers, who always know where everything is available in Vancouver or whatever city they're working in, they know where they need to go to find something. So if that's a custom leather jacket, it wasn't long before they started coming to us for custom leather jackets for TV productions, which sometimes was our own designs and sometimes it was a knockoff of some other designer that they needed multiples of. And that's continued through to this day. It still works like that. And then all the custom jackets that we did dovetailed into superhero costumes, which started with Smallville. I guess around season 5. Yeah, when they finally started getting out of their street clothes and into superhero costumes.
I think Justin knows more about our history sometimes than us.
I've been following Ocean Drive. You've probably seen their work in Smallville. They worked on Green Arrow, the Red Blur jacket, probably several others. I think Booster Gold, likely Cyborg, yes. Did you work on the other hoodies too?
There's the Kid Flash, Silver Banshee.
There was Aquaman and a bunch of villains, guests on the show.
Yeah, at this point we should bring out the figurines, which are behind us.
Yeah.
Yes, they have the official figures from Smallville right behind here. Is it
from the designer? Yeah.
Is it fun to see your work as an action figure?
Yeah, it is, especially back then. That was, I don't know if that was 10 years ago or 12 years ago, but we were thrilled when those came out.
When you guys first started, you mentioned you were doing different, but what got you into the actual leather market? What brought you to actually start creating anything in leather in the first place?
I started out making leather jackets in Montreal, working for a company there, and eventually my brother and I we'd always wanted to do something, have a company together, and so it just seemed like the most logical thing to get into. It's what I was experienced at, and Daryl had come from a retail background, so we thought a store making our own product seemed like the ideal business plan for us. So we opened a store here in Yaletown, and small tiny little store with a little workshop in the back, and that's when we started doing the odd stuff for the TV and film industry here, as well as selling to people off the streets, tourists, locals, and it grew to the point where we expanded our store and ended up doing that for about 12 years until we decided to close the store and just focus on more what we're doing now, which is online sales and TV and film work.
I don't know if you've already mentioned, but what was your very first film or television work that you guys actually worked on?
First Wave. Yeah, that was one. White Chicks, Little Man, you'll see our jackets on there. White Chicks, they were wearing pink and baby blue leather jackets when they were dressed up as the Blondes.
There was a scene where they had to like dance on the dance floor, and it was a kind of a tearaway thing where it just split up the back. Yeah, our special skills came in handy for that.
That's awesome. So when you guys started doing the superhero work, so you did those, and you mentioned earlier that you did a bunch where you had to copy things out. Superheroes are obviously, at this point, custom. There's no real, you don't find a jacket, or they don't bring a jacket in and say, copy this. They say, here's what to do. But did that really affect your business at that point? Is superheroes now, are you less the custom leather jacket guys and more of the custom leather superhero guys at this point?
Yeah, only because it's the bulk of the work we're doing now is for film and television. It's 90 to 95% of the work we're doing right now, and it's the film industry is quite voracious. When they need something, they need it right away, and so everything else has to be set aside. If somebody orders a jacket and what used to take, we'd say 2 to 3 weeks, we could make you a jacket. And now 3 months doesn't seem to be enough time, so it's getting pushed to 6 months. And so either we need to stop doing that, stop doing the custom jackets, or just expand the business. So that's kind of where we're at now.
I mean, you can really tell your mark on the shows have been very obvious, especially if you're in the costuming community. You can really tell on how it's really affected.
It'll be interesting to see where our business goes in the future, because we do like doing the fashion, just like street fashion, and a lot of the elements of our fashion aesthetic has gone into these costumes, as well as I can imagine if we had time to start putting out more fashion again, all these ideas that we've been developing over the years with the superheroes, like they could make their way into our street fashion. And there's some interesting elements that I'm always thinking, yeah, that would be cool on a jacket. Like sometimes it's a bit over the top, obviously, because they're superheroes and they can be cartoony or eccentric or whatever, but just one little element, I'm like, oh, that I've never seen that on a jacket, so that would be cool. Like,
superhero chic.
Yeah, superhero chic. There you go.
With Arrow, and then subsequently the spin-off Flash, how did, because as mentioned, you guys worked on Smallville. How did work on Arrow start for you guys? Whatever you want to go into, from when you guys were first contacted for it, when you were brought into it, was it because of your already known presence from working with Smallville? Was it completely different? Was the situation different? I know it's different. It's still CW, but it's a different thing. But how did that all start?
Yeah, they came to us after the initial Arrow costume. We did obviously several reproductions of that, and then the second season they came back and they started. Manny was tasked to make more original ideas, and so it just started to get more and more of a collaboration there too.
So just before we get into more Arrow Flash related questions, the Vancouver productions that you guys have worked on, and you can tell me if I'm right or if I'm missing any, but you guys have also worked on Once Upon a Time. You did Emma Swan's Red Jacket, very popular Red Jacket. You mentioned to me earlier that you did Rumpelstiltskin's leather gear. His pants. And you did Hook's jacket. Any other productions that have been going on maybe in the last 5-6 years that you've been working on that people would recognize your work, that you did custom work for, aside from these ones?
Those were the big ones. The up-and-coming one is Powerless, which the pilot shot in March. So I think that one's airing in September. It's a NBC pilot.
A costume for a character called Crimson Fox. So that was a bit of a departure for us. It was very, like most of our costumes are in leather mixed with some stretchy materials, but that one was pretty much all a stretchy leather, and the concept was very sexy, Crimson Fox, red, and so So we got to, and it has to be functional, of course, too. The actress was actually a stunt person who was doing all these stunts in it. So there were apparently some pretty crazy stunts, and the costume has to withstand that as well as be flexible and comfortable.
How much do you work? I mean, we're talking about several heroes that don't just stand around looking nice in the CW shows. They're usually very action-oriented. You have Stephen Amell, who does a lot of his own stunts and running around, and he's always reaching back, and he's always doing his own little stunts. Grant Gustin does a lot of running for the obvious reason of his superpower. But how does the actors factor into design? And we'll go to the full design process here in a second, but how do they relate to when you go from concept to your first prototype to them wearing it?
I don't think it's so much the actor. It's more the designer. That's where Maya Manny would come in, where she's having worked. She's been a designer for probably 25 years. I actually don't know, but a long time. And she would know, where the problems are going to come up. So she, one of her jobs is to make sure that the actor is as comfortable as possible and can do as many stunts as possible, and that the costume is going to last as long as possible, and things like that. So that's what goes into making the costume, making it fit right and look good all the time, not bagging out. That's where our expertise comes in, as well as knowing how to craft something that's not going to bag out on the actor, that he's going to be able to move in and just always be looking good, and as limited amount of maintenance as possible, so there's no downtime on the costume.
Right, yeah, because they're very functional looking as well, like their jacket and pants, and not just a spandex suit.
A season lasts for several months, so there is definitely upkeep on them, and they have to be replaced from time to time. And they're always, with the stunts, they're cutting into them for ropes and harnesses, and so we have to repair those, and so that's part of the job too, is just maintaining them, sometimes touching them up.
On average, how many, I'm assuming you obviously make them for the lead actor, and you probably make them for the stunt people as well, which would be different sizes of people. But on average, how many of each version, and I know you probably make new ones as they need them, but to start with, how many of each version do you normally make?
Anywhere from 2 to 4.
Sometimes if it's just sometimes it'll be one scene and they don't want to, they have a budget for each show, I guess, so sometimes we'll just do one if there's no stunts involved, but generally 2 to 4.
And then more as they need them. They get recycled through the shows. When they get too tattered looking, then they become stunt jackets.
Yeah, we noticed the pilot suit, which has quite a few different details, was used in one of the scenes where he got melted. You could tell, because they obviously didn't want to wreck one of the new ones, and they used that one.
That's very good of you to notice that. Yeah,
they've had us sometimes just cover the area that's going to be burned or blown apart or whatever. They'll get us to just replicate that part of the jacket and put it over top, so they don't have to destroy the whole.
Well, that's great. That's very interesting. I didn't actually catch that. So that's a great idea too, because they can do their props and the mask all melted, but the leather costumes, like you mentioned, they have a budget.
They brought us that burn suit brought it to us and said, "Can you fix this?"
And did you?
No, but we were able to use it to do repairs on all the tape pieces from it that weren't burnt, and use it to repair some of the other original suits. I think there was 4 suits that were made for the pilot that ended up being the stunt suits for season 1.
Can you tell me a little bit about the process, how it goes from you only know so much obviously from your end of things, but there's obviously meetings of the design aspect, and before it's fully realized and said, here, make this. But can you explain a little bit about how that process works in as many stages or as much details as you can? You can even pick, for instance, like the Flash, if you want to specifically talk about that one, about how that all works from top down to you guys.
Typically, Maya Manny, the designer, will work with her concept artist, and they'll have a back and forth for. We actually don't know exactly what goes on there because that's between her and him, but they'll sit down and hash out the costume. She'll bring her designs to him, and he'll render them, and then it goes through an approval process with the producers. And then once it's signed off on by the producers, then we'll get the artwork, and we'll have a sit-down meeting with the designer and talk about, beyond what's just on paper, what she wants from the costume. And then we'll discuss material choices, and the sourcing for the materials will be done either by the production or by us. If it's the leather, often it's us providing the leather. And then it goes into the pattern stage, and Keith will do a preliminary pattern, which can take generally probably a week. And then we'll cut a muslin, which is a mock-up for the actor. We'll meet with the actor and do a fitting, sometimes as many as 3 fittings before it's finally made in leather.
Yeah, it's a process that varies from project to project. Some are more complex, more complicated. Some are even, like there was this one, Zoom? Was it Zoom? It's like the Flash but black, and I think ultimately he had a big kind of smeared kind of mask, and the costume was really detailed, but you wouldn't know that from looking at it. I think they blurred him out on the show, but to start, yeah. So that costume took a lot of, like, the illustration that they gave us was actually very kind of blurry too, just to kind of get the idea across that it was kind of incoherent. So we had to figure out from that. That was one of the hardest projects, just because we had to bring that across, and it tended to be very complicated just because of that. It was like a Flash costume, but more detailed. So, and then there's ones that are quite simple, like basically a simple jacket and pants kind of thing. So those are obviously quicker and easier. And the Flash itself was an interesting story because it was originally designed in LA by a famous costume designer, and when they started filming it up here, I guess they filmed the pilot, brought to us. This was after we had done the Arrow show, and it was the same designer who did the Arrow costume, and before Maya became involved, it was Colleen Atwood. And so we had to kind of redo this costume for the actors here, and they had to be redone in a way that they were actually, that people wouldn't notice, that the fans wouldn't notice that they'd redone the costume. So that was its own challenge for sure.
Is that true?
No, it's in my album of images, it is a pilot costume and series costume. That's how I reference them, because you can tell if you're really looking at details. You can tell.
I mean, it's a cool design, but the makers of it, who made it, had all kinds of difficulties from the materials they chose, which it was, both suits were actually, they must have been like 20 pounds, whereas the ones we make are maybe 5 pounds or less. Like, so that adds a lot of strenuous effort on the actor's part. And also it was kind of the kind of leather that you'd more want to use in furniture, so there was no give to it, and it was heavy and didn't stretch, and there were a lot of, we actually kind of learned a lot from it too, just from the trial and error that we went through, and so that's lent itself to all the subsequent costumes we've worked on as well. So.
And that's what you mentioned just a little bit earlier, is that how material choice is a big something that you guys really want to talk about when you're doing the design process. It's very important.
Tailoring and material choices, because if it's, I guess that's our background too, is tailoring leather jackets and pants. So when you have a garment that fits very close to the body and fits the armhole properly, that's when you start getting really good movement in it. Same with a pair of pants that sits right in the rise. It's not sagging. You can move your legs around more. So combining that with supple leathers and stretch panels that have good integrity to them, you're able to get a suit that is very tailored and very movable.
We're always trying to perfect it too, from costume to costume. Like you look at it, and like Gerald said earlier, there's such a short turnaround time that when you get a chance to have a longer turnaround time and perfect it, as some of the more major costumes are, the end result is always better. But even so, we're a bit of perfectionists, so it's never actually perfect. But we carry that on to the next chance, and we always get another chance to do something new, and we try to always up the ante every time and make it better. And I think the same could be said for the costume designer Maya. Like, she's getting more and more creative, so our relationship is really nice, fun. It's a really good collaboration between her and us, and the illustrator too. Like,
it's a big team effort, right? You can have all the ideas in the world, but you got to work together for that.
Not just them either. Obviously, the producers like to really get in there, and they have ideas, as well as the props people and the production team. Like, I think it's like movies and TV. There's like it takes more than one person, right? So.
Well, yeah, it's a big team, and that's something that you're really aware of with Flash and Arrow. Like, you guys don't make the rubber or latex or whatever they use for the cowls for Flash. I mean, they do that, and they gotta work together and mesh together, and you guys have to know what's attaching where, and there's gonna be a quiver. How's that going on? How is, this other thing going on? And it, works together. And then when you see the final thing, you can't tell that 15 people had touched it, right?
And that's definitely part of the skill of the designer too, is she's coordinating all these different components for one character, not to mention the whole show, really, not just these characters.
3 shows. She's doing 3 shows. So.
Yeah, so it's pretty impressive. She hires the right people, and there's a lot of talent in this town. So, in this little Hollywood North town of ours.
Oh, it's an amazing town. So as you make in each costume, you mentioned this briefly, about how you're trying to make something better, but have you had to teach yourself or learn or create new techniques to get that look, that feel that she wants, that she's pushing for, or that she's designed?
Definitely, yeah. There's always something, little things. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but each costume, there's usually some element that we haven't done before. I don't know if you want to get into the minutiae of each costume. I don't really want to, but there's an example would be creating the veins or electricity that runs through the chests on the Reverse Flash or the Zoom character, the texture that's in the chest.
Yeah, Maya will have an idea or a concept, and she'll ask us about it, and we have a habit of just always never saying no. Like, we kind of just tackle it, even though you might not have a clue how you're going to do it. You're like, yep, you can do it. So we'll just kind of trial and error, do a few things and show her some options, and it generally works out, sometimes to our shock and surprise. But
that's amazing, because a lot of times when you think of, and this happened when Arrow first started, is that you get this idea that this is a leather jacket and this is what leather pants are. That's what you can do, that's what they look like. But what you guys have done, and the designs obviously from Maya brought down to, but what you guys have created and physically done is things that you've never seen in leather jackets before. They're from having stretch panels added or fabric with leather, like in the Flash, and even in Arrow having all his stretch panels everywhere to get that tight fit. That's stuff that you just don't see. That's not something you go into the store and say, I want this leather jacket with these stretch panels. So just that alone is a whole new concept in a way.
We when we first did the Smallville Green Arrow, Carolyn Cranston came to us and was like, we need these stretch panels like a ribbing. Can you do that? And at first we're like, no, I think you need a special machine for that, like with several needles. Because there are machines with like several needles that will do that. But then we thought about it and we said, yeah, that could be done with our little single needle machine. So we've been using that ever since in a lot of costumes and in our streetwear too. And that's another example of just how our these costumes lend themselves to streetwear in ways that you would never, like designers who do street fashion, it wouldn't occur to them because it's not necessary, but they're pretty cool elements that I actually can't wait to design a really cool motorcycle jacket sometimes that has some of these elements.
That'd be really, really cool. I'm a big fan of detail. I mean, I'm not a big fan of just straight flat things. So all these details I've seen in all these costumes that you've been involved with, that they've designed, is really neat because just having detail is fun. Sometimes it's hidden details, sometimes like on the Flash, whether you can tell at home on the TV screen or whatnot, but there's little lightning bolts all over it all.
Some of it is very subtle, and it's a lot of it is in the finishing too. Like each piece is fully aligned and comfortable, and the actors actually say sometimes how, like, the beauty of the garment, they're kind of overwhelmed and they're like, this helps my character. It helps their acting apparently when it's like when they slip into something that really makes them feel dynamic and almost like a superhero, I guess.
Well, Stephen Amell, actually, in one interview that he did, he mentioned how he wanted to make sure that he could dress himself. That was a big thing, where some of the superheroes in the films and whatnot, like Ben Affleck, for instance, as the new Batman, he can't dress himself. And whereas Stephen Amell wanted to be able to zip it all up, put it all on, tie his shoes, throw the quiver on, and that was very important. So what you've done is create superheroes that could exist. I could put on a superhero costume, very, designed by you. Like, I put it on there. I've worn it. I don't need a team of people putting it on me. Now, obviously, they have a team of people making sure it's fitting properly and sitting correctly, but
sometimes they need a team of people to help them into them, but or out of them. Sometimes they're so snug that you have to kind of peel them off. But
it's a warm day and they sweated a lot, I'm sure, with the leather. That doesn't help.
That was an issue at first with Stephen Amell and Grant Gustin. Like, there was all this talk about putting air vents and stuff so they wouldn't sweat too much, like filming under bright lights or out in the sun. But in the end, I think the leather we use is light, and the material, they do kind of breathe. It's not like plastic or some of the heavier leathers. So the most they'll do is just maybe wear sweat pads or something underneath so they don't saturate the suit.
Or I know they wear Under Armour shirts as well, and that probably helps a big deal. And both of you can answer this one. Do you have a favorite one that you've done out of all your Smallville through now, superhero suit? Do you have a favorite one that you've done or version?
It's a good question. We keep the main characters keep wearing the same outfits. Sometimes they'll upgrade them for the new season. So we're doing repeats from like a costume that we did 3 years ago. So you kind of come back to that and you get a new appreciation for it, and you actually can touch it up and make little improvements too. So, but as far as your question, I don't know. I lean towards the women's costumes because they're more. I find them more interesting with the lines. With a woman's body, they're just you can get away with a lot more, I guess. So you can be a little bit more. Flair, a little more sexy.
Sculpting a suit, the three-dimensional aspect of a woman's suit versus a men's. Men's suits tend to be more linear.
So they've just started doing more. It seems doing more female superheroes, and I'm never sure which ones we're at liberty to talk about because some of them haven't aired yet. But we've done a few lately, and we actually did a few in a row, and they were all great.
Vixen's been on TV, yeah.
Vixen and Trajectory, which is here right now. That was actually one of my favorites there, and I think it was one of Maya's favorites too, the Trajectory one.
It's a beautiful costume.
The Connor Hawk costume, that was a fun one to do. A very detailed costume with leather suit and all the armor components to it. So that one turned out really well.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems each time we do one, I like it better than the last. Maya says the same thing too.
As you're doing more, you're getting, I think she's getting more creative freedom to do superheroes and villains, and you're getting more creative freedom to do how you do it. So everyone you do is going to be a great experience. Now, we've talked briefly before, like you guys, you keep abreast as much as you can in the shows because you're working very hard on them. But is there a superhero that you loved as a kid or whatnot that you would, and keep in mind, like, no spoilers, nothing that's going to happen, but would there be one that you would be like, love to have worked on or to work on?
For me, growing up, it was the Flash. I was a big Flash fan. Yeah, Flash and Superman, but Flash was the one I collected.
So this has been amazing for you then.
Yeah, yes and no. I think we're too close to it we're too far into it to really be blown away by it now. It's been such a huge part of our life for a long time now. So yeah, I'd like to be able to say that I'm blown away, but that would be lying.
Batman would be cool. I mean, that's been done to death, but we could definitely add our stamp to it, do something completely different.
That'd be cool. I'd love to see what they would do in this universe for Batman, because he obviously wouldn't look too much like any of the versions at this point with this aesthetic that is there.
That would be interesting. I as far as what we haven't done though, I really like the Superman costume, the most recent Superman costume that was done. I thought they did a very good job on that one.
That's the tricky thing about these costumes, I guess, too, is that in the comic books they look like spandex, like they're basically leotards or else painted on. So you have to, like, there's this underlying fear that you're gonna make them look silly or cartoony. So, and probably some of them have, but for the most part, yeah, I think Maya does a great job of, like, they could almost be street fashion.
Yeah, she does a good job grounding them into regular wear. How do you guys feel? And this is something I briefly talked to Daryl about a while ago. But as a Canadian myself, you guys are in Canada. You guys both are Canadian, and you're making such a stamp on these superheroes that have been around for years, dozens of years, decades. And I mean, you talk about Flash, and Flash has been around for so long, and Green Arrow, and all these characters. And I don't know if you thought about it. I know Daryl said he never even considered it when I talked to him about it. But to be Canadian and putting these, like, and it's in a Canadian-based production company, and a Canadian, like, does that strum your patriotic core a little bit?
I feel like these comic book characters are part of just North American culture. I don't really differentiate between Canada and the US as far as comics go. I think we're all part of the same community, so maybe that's why I don't get patriotic about it.
Yeah, I would be pleased if they would fly us down to LA and we could work on them there.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
I have to say though, I'm excited about that. For me, it's I mean, Superman's Canadian, created by Canadians, right? So that's always been a big thing for me. Superman's my favorite superhero, but and Green Arrow was actually my second favorite growing up. So when you guys, just even the original on Smallville, the original as in the first live version, was always really cool to have made in Canada, designed by, and worked on by Canadians, and it's just, to me, that's just really cool to make that kind of mark.
How do you like the new Green Arrow costume?
I quite like the new version. Because technically now he's Green Arrow. Before it was just the Arrow, and it's got a kind of urban strength to it, I guess. Because the other one was very motorcycle gear. It was very utilitarian a little bit, very simple. The new one has this nice, bold, strong
combat vibe.
Yeah, very much. That's totally what I get from it. I quite like that. Everything's a little bit more streamlined. Squiver's streamlined. The forearm bracers, which I'm not sure. Did you guys work on the? So all those elements, I think they look really cool and how they do that. I actually quite like even what you guys done with the Flash. It's unknown what they're going to do with the film version, but I like, and it's always very interesting because I know you don't pay attention to the fan stuff, but new things always shock people. When the first Arrow image popped up, and I know you didn't have anything to do with that costume, but at the design process originally, but everyone didn't like it because it didn't look like your original that you guys did. And when the Flash came out, everyone complained about it. It's the wrong color. It's too dark. It's burgundy. It's not red. Despite the fact that you have a nice bright red one right here. I know you have to airbrush it still, but everyone, the first shocker of something being different. But then now people just absolutely love this costume. They're already talking about how they're not going to like the new Ezra one, Ezra Miller one for
Maya's the one with her who has more at stake, I guess, because it does matter what the fans think, and so if she reads or hears like people are bitching and complaining, but for the most part I think the positive comments outweigh the negative ones, and then when the actors themselves will go on the record and say, wow, this is awesome, like Stephen Amell told her that she nailed it, like, and he's a really, by all accounts, not easy to please. That's why we were brought in to begin with.
No, he's really, and he loves that new suit. I mean, he took it to him on the wrestling, right? And that the big, I don't know if you saw that.
I saw a couple of clips. I didn't see. Did he actually wrestle?
He took the vest and he took off the vest, but he wore his boots. So, and then custom made shorts. But he did come in wearing, I'm pointing at it, you can't see me pointing at it, but there's one right there. And you got one right behind us here. He just wore the vest, but he showed it off and stuff. And, it just goes to actually show about the functionality that you guys did with that. So I asked you guys two probably controversial questions on this little video here. Have you seen the knockoffs of your designs and Maya's designs worn by fans?
Oh yeah, I've seen some pretty hilarious ones and some pretty good ones where they've put a lot of work into it, and yeah, kudos to them. I think it's great. It's I mean, I can't feel like I'm taking credit for them, but it's interesting.
Within the first, when Stephen wore it at San Diego Comic-Con, the new suit, I'm talking days, and then they already had designs up from China of designs, and then as more details came out, they kept altering them.
Yeah, years ago when we were still doing the Smallville stuff, then we would see these like knockoffs from India or China, and really they would actually use our images like from our website or from television or whatever, and use them to publicize it, and it was totally false advertising because they look like a garbage bag what they produce. So those ones are, yeah, I don't pay much attention to them anymore, but back then I'm like, well, it's kind of a compliment in a way, but also like kind of bastardly too.
Yeah, no, that's...
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we were at first upset that they would use our images because you knew what the costume that they're selling for $150, what it ultimately was going to look like. So yeah, you don't want to ever see people lying like that to people who aren't necessarily rich, who are shelling out money for these costumes and expecting it to look a certain way. It kind of reminds me of when you're a kid and speaking of comics, but on the back of the comics there was the toy soldiers that you could buy, or the seahorses, and those sorts of things that people would mail in for, expecting to see like these great combat figurines, and they would be, just
disappointing people. They're in the business of disappointing people. When they're reproduced, they're usually like done really cheaply, and they're inexpensive and really cheap materials, really cheap leather, and
So basically, if it's $150 and it sounds too good to be true, but buyer beware.
Yeah, you can't polish a turd, right?
I'm going to quote that. That is going to be in big letters across the screen.
The thing that I find interesting, though, more than that, is the fan art. I think there's so much beautiful art out there being produced by fans, and they actually will take a costume and embellish it, or in some cases improve upon it. And so I think that's really a compliment to the designer and to the TV show, and probably stokes the actors' egos more than mine. But
I think it's a whole round thing. It's the actor, it's you guys, Maya with her wonderful designs, that it all factors into that one piece, right? Now I'm gonna ask a question here that I'm sure anyone here is gonna ask anyway, and you get the nice definitive. If someone came up to you right now and said, "Hey, I want a flash jacket. Can you make it for me?"
No, we can't do that, but we can make you one of our styles.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's just to make sure people realize that they can't. I mean, that's one thing that people have to understand is Ocean Drive Leather is a company that values their partnership and with CW and the people they work with, and they have contracts. You guys have contracts, and you can't just go around making people superhero costumes of the ones they've already made that you're under contract with, obviously.
Thank goodness we don't have time either to do those kinds of jobs. It's just too crazy right now with the amount of superhero characters that are coming down the pipe.
I'm sure you'd have a backlog of people asking.
We have so many spoilers we could tell you. There's definitely a whole slew of superhero costumes coming down the pike with these 3 shows, and among other things, who knows, some new shows as well. But
yeah, that's why I think a lot of people are hoping that this universe just keeps on going. All 3 shows have been pretty amazing, and yeah. So anyway, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to see me. My trip to Vancouver here. It's great to see your work. Great to see such great workmanship happening, locally, and working with them very, very, very closely. It's really amazing. So thank you so much.
5,000 miles to see us.
Yeah, I guess it was about that, wasn't it? Kilometers, yes. If you guys have any questions, just ask me down in the comments below. I answer what I can about what they have here, and basically what you see is just amazing. And but be sure to ask me down below if you have any questions. But for now, just make sure you click over to subscribe. I'm gonna have some more interviews coming up, and as always, thanks for watching.